When you buy any iPixi camera, we supply you with the free Winnie viewing software. This software gives you the ability to view your footage, make configuration changes to your camera, see your speed, your location on Google Maps, and to simply locate videos you may consider important. Each one of our cameras comes with an SD card. Straight out of the box, on that SD card you'll find the preloaded software. All you need to do is pop the SD card into your PC, open up the software folder and click Setup. This will install the software for you and create a handy shortcut on your desktop. Alternatively, you can download the latest software from the iPixi website. On occasion, we may offer updated software through the website for you to download, but don't worry, it's all free of charge. Once you've installed the software, you're ready to double-click that desktop shortcut and open it up. When you open the software for the first time, you'll be asked which camera you have. It's important you pick the right camera to mean the software works correctly. Don't worry if you pick the wrong camera initially, we can change it later. Now you have the software open, the first thing you need to do is find your SD card. Regardless of whether you have any footage to view, anything we do in the software needs to write to the card. In a nutshell, your SD card works as a middleman between your PC and your camera. Any configuration changes are stored on the SD card, and then the card gives the information to the camera. To find your SD card, just click the small magnifying glass to the left of the green N. If your card is inserted into the PC correctly, then it should automatically find it. If you have multiple cards inserted, then the software may ask you to confirm which card is the correct one. Just highlight the correct card and click OK. If you've had the card in the camera already and made some recordings, then once you've found your card, the file list below will populate with the files you created. The N, E and P in the top right corner will hide or unhide certain files. The N files are your normal recordings. These are just everyday driving, 1-minute files that will eventually overwrite each other. The E files are your event recordings. These are the recordings that have been triggered by the built-in shock sensor or by you pushing the button on the camera. These are all 30-second clips, 15 seconds before the shock and 15 seconds after. Finally, the P files are your parking recordings. These are the recordings triggered by motion in front of the lens. To explain parking mode begins once the vehicle is stationary for 10 minutes. The camera will automatically flick into parking mode, and at this point it stops creating normal recordings. The only time the camera will create a recording in this mode is if it senses movement in front of the lens. The idea is that your camera is now a security device, even when you aren't with your vehicle. By only recording when it senses movement, you shouldn't need to trawl through hours of footage to find an incident. If you have a 2-camera system, both cameras have the movement sensor built in. All of the iPixi cameras come with an optional GPS feature. Assuming you purchase your camera with this option, you unlock 2 brilliant features. When playing back your videos, you'll be able to see your speed and your location on Google Maps. You can toggle between miles per hour and kilometers per hour, and even change the map to satellite view and zoom in if you're on a track or off-road. In terms of playing back your video, there are a number of changes that can be made, and we'll just run through those. Firstly, if you have a 2-camera system, your screen will default to a dual screen, and your front and rear videos will play simultaneously. You have the option in the top left corner of choosing whether you want to view both or just one of the videos. In the bottom left corner you have some screen options. You can make the video full screen and scroll to the bottom of that screen to see the playback options. Next to that button are 2 buttons that change the orientation of your video. This is in case you have a camera mounted upside down or perhaps pointing at a side mirror. You can still watch the video easily and in the correct orientation. To the right of these buttons are your playback buttons. These will pause, play, stop your video or even fast forward and skip to the next one. Underneath these buttons are the brightness, contrast and chroma bars. Moving these bars will affect the look of the video playing. Pushing the reset button will restore the levels to default. To the right is the GPS signal bar. This just gives you an indicator of the signal you were receiving during the video. Should this bar be empty, this means your GPS is not connected correctly. This will also mean that your speed and maps will not work correctly. The small rotator icon next to your speed will toggle between miles per hour and kilometers per hour. Above the speed is a volume level, which will make the volume of the video quieter or louder. The timer to the right of this indicates how far through the current video you are, and below that, how long the video is in total. Below the timers are your coordinates. This is the data your GPS collects to give you an accurate location on Google Maps. Finally, the right-hand side shows your G-Shock sensor activity. The blue line shows your movement left and right. The red line shows acceleration and braking, and the green line shows any movements up or down. Should these lines breach the preset parameters, this is when an event recording will be made. Now if we move up to the top of the screen, there are 5 icons. The first one is your viewer configuration. You will need to stop any videos playing before you can access this screen. This is where you can change settings relating to the software, change the language, the product model, and other software settings. Always click OK after making any changes so that the changes apply. Initialization will restore the settings back to default. To the right of this icon is the operating configuration button. This is where you can make changes to the card, which will then apply to the camera. Depending upon your product model, this screen may look slightly different because some models have different options available. The first thing worth noting is that your SD card is split into 3 sections. Again, Movie, which are your normal files, Motion, which are your parking files, and Event, which are your shock sensor event files. In this section you can amend the amount of space you want on the card allocated to each type of recording. As standard, the card will have 50% available for normal recordings, 20% for motion, and 30% for event. This means that once that 50%, for example, is full, the camera will begin overwriting the oldest files in that section. You can amend the capacity of each folder by dragging the line breaks. Should you make changes in this section, the software will warn you that you may be deleting recordings, because you're reducing the space available in that folder, and that folder may be full of recordings. You must click yes if you're happy to make the change. On the section above, you can change the contrast, brightness and colour of your camera sensor. This affects the camera itself and will mean recordings created are brighter or darker, etc. Within the basic configuration, you'll find all the main setting changes that can be made. The recording mode option allows you to choose whether you want the camera to continuously record and then segregate the event files as normal, or not create the normal recordings but only the event ones. We recommend keeping this option as normal. The resolution option will let you change the quality of the recordings being created. On this model, we have the option of Full HD or HD. Other models offer more options like VGA or D1. The lesser the quality, the smaller the file, and therefore the more recordings you'll be able to create before your SD card is full and begins overwriting. The recording time option determines the length of your normal recordings. You have the choice of 30 seconds, 1 minute, or 2 minutes. The reason the recordings are created like this is firstly, so any given recording is small enough to send around easily, should you ever need to. Also, when the camera eventually overwrites the earliest file, you only lose 1 minute at a time. Again, we recommend just keeping this set at 1 minute. The front camera video quality option is similar to the resolution option but gives you a broader scope to make the adjustment and find the perfect quality to SD card capacity mix. You will notice a difference in the video quality if you change this setting, but in turn, you will also notice that you are getting more recordings on your SD card before it begins to overwrite. The summertime option is in relation to the time. This should be set to yes if we are in daylight saving time. On some models, the speed data from your GPS is written to the raw video as well as being displayed within the software. This speed option allows you to determine whether the speed is displayed in miles per hour or kilometers per hour. Driving mode FPS refers to the frames per second of the recording when in normal driving mode. 30 frames per second will create a smooth recording. If you adjust this down to 15, for example, the recording will be jumpy, but again, you will find that you're making more recordings before overwriting. Parking mode FPS refers to the frames per second whilst in parking mode. Because the vehicle is stationary in parking mode, the recording does not need to cater for the movement of the vehicle, and therefore 20 frames per second will create a smooth enough video, and will also mean you aren't wasting SD card space. This can be amended to 15 frames per second if required. The parking mode change option lets you decide whether you'll manually flick the camera into parking mode by holding the button on the camera down for 3 seconds, or you'll let the camera automatically flick into parking mode once it notices you haven't moved for 10 minutes. Please note that even if you choose automatic, you can still manually flick the camera into parking mode. When the camera is in your car, there are a number of verbal notifications it offers you. When an event recording is being created, the camera makes a bing bong noise. If you have forgotten to put your SD card in the camera, it notifies you of this. It also gives you other commands. This is called the voice guide. The voice guide volume level determines how loud these notifications are or whether you would like to turn them off. 0 will turn them off and 3 will make them louder. Recording volume level refers to the inbuilt microphone. Again, 0 will mute the microphone whilst 3 will make it more sensitive. It's completely up to you whether you have the microphone on or not. On all of the iPixi cameras there's a video out socket. This is if you ever wanted to send the live footage to a screen via a cable. The video out format option determines the format of the live feed. This is not important unless you are using the video out feature. Setting the time on your camera is very important. The time and date is the way in which the camera saves the files. The file names are essentially the date followed by the time, and this means you can easily find any important files. The time and date is also written in the corner of all of your videos, and in fact some insurance companies may dispute your video as evidence should the time and date be incorrect. So, we set the time within this configuration window. This only needs to be set once, and then, regardless of whether the camera is powered on or not, the time will elapse normally. The time setting option will always default to the time and date in the bottom right of your PC when this configuration window is open. You will need to manually amend this time by highlighting the correct field and clicking the up or down arrows to amend. The time we need to input is the exact time that you'll be putting the SD card back into the camera and powering the camera on. As previously explained, the SD card is the middleman, and until the card is in the camera, the information is not passed across. So, we decide that at a certain time we'll be putting the SD card in the camera. We input that time into the time setting field and then we change the set time option to yes. This option will always default to no whenever we open the configuration page, and therefore the time will never be affected again until you change the option to yes. The LED lightning option refers to a security light that is on the front of all of the iPixi cameras. The idea is that the light draws attention to the camera and therefore acts as a deterrent. It flashes in different ways depending upon the recording mode. You have the option here to turn this light off completely by choosing no. We recommend having the light off. Standard time is where you set your time zone. Some models list regions and some just plus or minus hours. Finally, the overwrite function decides whether your event and parking recordings eventually overwrite when that section of the SD card is full. If you decide that you do not want them to overwrite and choose no, then once these sections are full, no event or parking recordings will be made until you manually delete the old ones. The voice guide will inform you once these sections are full. We would recommend keeping this setting as yes and allowing the camera to overwrite these files eventually. The reason we believe this is the best option is because these files are supposed to be created less frequently. The nature of the recordings means that you should not be filling these sections of the card up very quickly, and therefore the files being overwritten when new ones are created are probably quite old, and if they were important, they would have been dealt with by now. Now we can move on to the next tab, which is your sensitivity configuration. This is the section where we can amend the sensitivity of the inbuilt shock sensor and motion detector. The shock sensor can be amended differently for the two recording types. If you're in normal recording, you may want the shock sensor to be less sensitive than in parking mode. You can even adjust each axis sensitivity independently. For example, if you notice the event recordings are being triggered regularly by speed bumps, you can reduce the sensitivity of the up and down axes whilst keeping the other axes at a normal level. On certain models, you can run a high quality configuration. This allows you to watch a previously recorded video, see the shock sensor activity and manually move the breaching parameters closer or further away from the recording activity, therefore giving you a genuine look at the effect your changes will make on the frequency of your event recordings. On the right, you can amend the sensitivity of your motion detector used in parking mode. This really is user defined. If you notice recordings being created with movement you do not consider important, like trees moving in the wind or flickering lampposts, you can adjust that sensitivity down to ensure the recordings you're getting are recordings you want and recordings you need. The final tab on the top is the power shutdown function. The braking voltage is a feature not found on many other cameras. The iPixi Winnie cams all constantly monitor the voltage being received by the camera. whether being powered by the cigarette lighter or hardwired using the hardwire cable. Using that information, the camera can easily detect if the voltage is dropping and therefore whether the lack of power may cause an issue for the driver when returning to the vehicle. The cameras don't use much power and have been tested for weeks in stationary vehicles, but as a precaution you can set the braking voltage from 11.8 volts up to 12.2 volts, and if the camera starts receiving less than this, it will power off, leaving your battery with enough power to start your vehicle. Many other cameras on the market require additional products to be fitted to monitor this voltage, but with ours, it's all built in. Finally, you have an option to power off the camera should it begin to overheat. In the UK this really isn't an issue, but in a global market these precautions are paramount. We would suggest just leaving that feature on. At iPixi we pride ourselves on offering the best customer service before and after sale. Should you need any assistance at all, we would encourage you to call us, email us or utilise the live chat feature on our website. With that, we can assist you effectively using our remote support software to dial into your PC, walk you through and resolve any issues you may be experiencing.